Welcome back to another episode of Brothers FM Podcast. Brothers FM is an online radio station devoted to the Allman Brothers Band and their extended musical family. You can tune in anytime in a browser on any device at brothers.fm. Let's jump in. We're excited for another edition of the Brothers FM Podcast. We have a Georgia music historian, Mr. Jamie Weatherford, who is the founder and previous owner of Rock Candy Tours in Macon, Georgia, and is currently the vice president of Crown Candy Corporation, and is a knowledgeable fellow on all things music in Georgia and very much so in Macon. So great to have Jamie on board. Thanks for coming, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me be here.
We've got the big show coming up this weekend, this Friday. Today's the 26th, so everybody's fired up. I'm fired up. I think I just saw the other day that it's actually going to be streamed. I'm not sure where, maybe in Nugs. Is that true?
I'm not 100% sure about the location of where it's going to be streamed, but yes, I've also read it's going to be streamed. I'm going,
Nice.
So it wasn't of concern to me.
Hell yeah. Good.
Yeah. But, the venue where it's being held, the Macon City Auditorium, it's wonderful that, first off, I want to thank the producers of this event for bringing it back to Macon. We have all, frankly, that are associated with loving the Allman Brothers Band in the city of Macon have been kind of curious what the plans have been with Dickie since he passed. And honestly, I don't even know exactly what the final resting plans are with him. At one point, it was stated that the entire band was going to be buried in Rose Hill Cemetery. And so until I hear something definitive otherwise, I'm hoping that happens, but I'm getting the impression it's not. So I'm very grateful that, that Dickie's family, Dwayne, and whomever else was involved has decided to bring this concert to Macon because, we love the Allman Brothers Band here. They're one of the most significant bands to come out of Macon. They did a great job of calling Macon home. They consistently did things for the city of Macon. They held multiple fundraisers through the years for different organizations in Macon. They helped save our Fox Theater. It's called the Grand Opera House. They helped save that in 1973. So they've really been a huge part of the community. And so it's wonderful that they're coming back, and we're really grateful that they chose to do that. The Macon City Auditorium itself is really special. Macon was founded in 1823. Making it, I believe, the fourth oldest city in the state of Georgia. And to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the birth of Macon, Georgia, it was decided that a bunch of private investors would build the Macon City Auditorium. So construction on the auditorium began in 1923 and completed in 1925. And it was, the site of countless social events, music events, conventions, that kind of stuff. But in terms of music, really the most significant thing that happened there was around 1945, 1946, a young man went to go see a performer named Sister Rosetta Tharpe. And the story differs, as it always does, a little bit with this gentleman. But essentially, Sister Rosetta Tharpe pulled the young boy up on stage. He would have been about 14 years old. He performed with her. The crowd went nuts, and that's the day that Little Richard decided he wanted to be in rock and roll. So arguably, to some degree, the birth of rock and roll happened in the Macon City Auditorium. And then on December 18th of 1967, it was the site of Otis Redding's memorial. And so, of course, Otis passed away on December 10th of 1967 at the very young age of 26 years old. And 8 days later, they held a memorial for him at the auditorium. And of course, all the bigwigs in the music industry plus other performers from James Brown, Sam and Dave, Percy Sledge, all these other incredible artists all attended. Word on the street is James Brown really showed out at that event, which is interesting. But and then like the executives like Ahmet Ertegun and all these other folks were here as well. And so, you have the birth of rock and roll, you have the memorialization of the greatest male R&B singer of all time at the Macon City Auditorium. And then it was in 1989, shortly after the release of the Allman Brothers Band Dreams box set, that the Allman Brothers Band came back to Macon. A lot of, it's interesting. A lot of people, Kirk West, who ended up becoming the founder, along with his wife Kirsten West. Kirk was a really large advocate and for that box set. And it's interesting because a lot of people had kind of, Greg Allman had some solo success in the 80s with I'm No Angel. And that probably is maybe what ignited the box set idea in the first place. But that box set really kind of brought back the Allman Brothers into the American conscious. That box set had a huge impact. And then
Yeah.
the Allman Brothers came back to Macon in '89 and performed, and that was a really special show.
Oh, that was
Uh,
huge. That was yeah, that was Alan Woody's first show, Warren Haynes' first show. They had Johnny
right.
Neal. Yeah, I
Yeah, it
got
was
this right. Look at that. That's Johnny Neal's signature.
wow.
Yeah.
R.I.P. my
They,
man. Yeah, yeah, that was a real fun show for me personally because as you and I both did, we know Amy Lavelle, Chuck Lavelle's daughter growing up, and I went to that show with Amy, and I was young. I don't know, 1989. I was
we were in the
15
eighth
years
grade,
old.
weren't we?
15 years old, you know, and I kind of feel bad upon reflection now, but we went in backstage, and I remember Red Dog opening up the door for us, the famous roadie, and he was like, "Hey, Amy," and then the whole band was back at down there eating H&H's Mama Louise's food from the soul food joint H&H, and so it was just real kind of a for me it was special to walk in there, and we didn't stay long. We walked up and got front row center front row center seats and saved some seats for my sister Brooke and some other folks. And I'll never forget they opened up the doors and these long term, hardcore Allman brothers and sisters fans came running in. And when they saw us sitting front and center, they were pissed. So to whomever those people were that we, kind of got in there a little bit early, I've always really felt kind of bad about that. But that show was amazing. It was electric. The crowd was going crazy. And for some reason afterwards, Dickie had been looking at me a lot during that show. And I got up and gave him a high five. He was on the stage and I was like, I'm never washing this hand again. But anyhow, and then they came back, they did a long series of shows there. I can't remember exactly how many to record their live album.
Yeah, that was
It's
four shows. I was like, what was that, 91 or New
91. They did it,
Year's? Yeah, they had
and it was New
three
Year.
shows and then they added that
Yeah.
fourth one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting too because I had the tickets to those shows in my backpack and somebody stole the tickets. I never found out who it was
Oh,
at school.
oh,
Yeah,
no
but
way.
yeah, I never
Oh,
found out. I told some
I
people
know.
I
I
had
don't
tickets.
remember
Somebody
that.
went in my backpack. They stole the tickets, but I went to the shows and just walked in and
Yeah.
had success. So
Yeah,
uh, it was
that was that first half of that. I remembered that show being going to be all from Macon. I thought I was like it was just going to be from Macon. That was, I mean, Tom Dowd was there. He was recording that whole thing. But then they ended up not using a lot. I think they only used like one song off
I
of
think
it.
they had sound issues, is what
Yeah.
what I kind of heard about it. So that auditorium has just been a tremendous part of Macon and the Allman Brothers. I actually did a spreadsheet one time and for the tour company, and I reviewed everywhere that they had played in the city of Macon that was documented. And the auditorium by far, I think it was 11 shows they performed there. Then after the 80s, they did another, like maybe five or six off the top of my head. So that was, I mean, really their primary location. When Greg, after the Allman Brothers disbanded in the teens, Greg then started holding his solo shows at the Grand Opera House, which is kind of interesting because the Grand Opera House was slated for demolition in 1973, and a group came together calling themselves the Macon Arts Council. It was a group of private citizens, and they fought to save the Grand, which they were successful for. One of the things that they did to raise money was they had a group of developers and construction type folks that came in and built a house, and then they auctioned off the house and used the money to restore the Grand. Well, and it was Greg Allman who bought the house, and so Greg sort of bought the house that helped save the Grand. And a lot of people, that was known as the I'm trying to remember the name locally. I think it's the Hilltop House is what they call it. It's not far off of Gray Highway. A lot of people say that was Cher's house, and that is where Cher would stay when Greg and her were in town. But Chank was like, "No, man, that was my house with Greg," and so and Chank, of course, who was Greg's,
Yeah.
really greatest love. Chank, it was funny. Chank told me, he said, "Man, it's funny. Greg wasn't there often, so he let me have the primary bedroom with the ensuite bathroom. So when Cher came, they would stay in the guest room, and she'd have to walk down the hallway to the bathroom, and he always felt kind of bad about it." Which is a funny story to me, but anyhow, so it's just it's a real full circle moment to have those guys come back. That's where the Allman Betts Band has also performed, the twice that I'm aware of that I've seen them there. And then Government Mule has performed there on a few occasions as well. It holds like 2,300 with seats in it and about 2,600 without seats. But what was exciting was in to celebrate the 200 year, the bicentennial of Macon, which would have been 2023. The city of Macon invested, I think it was about another 6 or 8 million into it, and did some roof repair, got new seats, dropped. There was this weird kind of a drop down acoustical tile thing they got rid of,
In the top,
installed new.
in the
Yeah, you
very
remember
top.
those discs, the disc at the
Yeah, I
top
used
that.
to I used to climb up there with my uncle. Yeah, look
Yeah,
down.
yeah. So those are gone now. It's a black
Okay.
ceiling with like a spray on it, and I think it's improved the sound some. I mean, they've done some work to it. I'm sure it could probably use more, but it was a good start, and hopefully they can continue to invest in that building because the history is incredible. And it's important to note too that right beside the Macon City Auditorium, when you're on Cherry Street, to the right of that is Snow's Memorial, and that is where Dwayne Allman's memorial was in 1971, and then Greg's memorial in 2017. Across the street from that is Hart's Memorial, where Barry Oakley's memorial was as well. So, right there within basically 10 yards of each other between the Macon City Auditorium and Snow's Memorial, you have the birth of rock and roll, the memorialization of Otis Redding, the greatest African American male soul singer of all time, then the memorialization of Dwayne Allman, who's one of the top five guitarists by most people's, account in the history of rock and roll, and of course the founder of Southern rock. And then the memorialization of his brother, Greg Allman, arguably the greatest white soul singer of all time. And so it's just a remarkable 10 yards in the city of Macon. And there's really, frankly, no other city in the country that can boast, that kind of a credential, if you will. It was interesting when Greg passed. I don't think anybody really knew what to expect, but I don't, some claim up to 10,000 people lined the streets from Snow's Memorial Rose Hill Cemetery, and uh, that was a really special thing to see. And of course, the big house ended up shutting down the highway in front of their. That took some special work because it's a highway. But they shut down, and even though the gates at the big house were closed for the private memorial, the entire street was lined with everybody put their lawn chairs and they sat there and they mourned as fans, and it was a really special moment. And we were honored and thrilled that Greg had um, chosen Macon as his final resting place. And then Mama A's ashes are supposedly with him. Um, and then, of course, we've got Butch there and Dwayne and Barry. So, um, you know, I'm kind of holding my breath to see what happens with Dickie. It would be amazing if he was laid to rest there, if he's not laid to rest somewhere already. And then the same with JMO as well. So just a really special place, a special city that honors the heritage of the Allman Brothers. It's funny, and you can probably attest to this. You grow up in Macon, and it's just kind of part of the fabric. It's not like something that's like you don't really realize it's different, But then you go to San Francisco, and it's like all Grateful Dead everywhere, and you're like, oh wow, this is really cool to see all this Grateful Dead stuff, and you get to go by the 710 Hyde Ashbury House and all these things, and then I left for college and I came back and I started seeing all the things that were how different it was in Macon, how much the Allman Brothers were loved here and appreciated here, and the old Southern rock hippies that are still around and doing all the great things like GABA, the Georgia Allman Brothers Band Association, and all that. So it's interesting. It took me sort of getting out of the city for a period of time before I was able to come back and really recognize how incredibly significant that band and its culture has been for this area. So,
It's true. You gotta kind of step out and to appreciate it and get a view of it. But yeah,
yeah,
you're exactly right. And but cheers to you too for when you came back. You really lit up the Macon music scene, in my opinion, and a lot of
well,
people's
thank you. I mean,
opinion, in
I'm not
boasting up Rock
I'm not a
Candy tours.
musician.
You play
Yeah,
a
I mean,
mean
so
tambourine, man.
yeah, I came back in 2003 and uh, got involved with a concert organization called Bragg Jam, and part of that was because I had seen this woman on TV that I thought I'd have a lot in content, a lot in common with, and I was sort of chasing this young lady, and she put a mutual good friend of ours. She said, "Well, put Jamie on the Bragg Jam board to see if he's worth a darn, if he's just some, silly." What would be the right word? Some silly, no, doesn't give a shit white boy kind of thing. And anyway, the young lady that was chasing is Jessica Walden, the daughter of Alan Walden, the niece of Phil Walden, and she's my wife today. We've been together now for 17 years. We have a 10-year-old child, and we were in 2011. The Georgia Music Hall of Fame closed its doors, and Jessica rolled over one morning and said, "We should start a tour company." And I was like, "Well, how do you do that?" She's like, "I don't know. That's why I'm telling you. You need to figure it out." So I reached out to Newtown Macon and I said, "Hey, we want to start a tour company." And they said, "That's great. What do you need?" And I said, "I don't know. That's why I'm calling you." And they said, "Well, can you tell some lies?" I said, "I can tell a lot of lies." And they said, "All right, we'll send you an LLC, And with the help of Newtown Macon, we just started meeting at a local park, um, and just started kind of getting the word out on social media that we were giving these tours. And at first, it was actually through Mercer University, and Mercer's played a huge role in Macon. And we were initially giving it to them because the idea was, even though Mercer's like located in pretty much downtown Macon, it was always kind of isolated a little bit, and they were wise enough to recognize that if they didn't get involved in the community in a real wholehearted way, that there was potential that maybe they were going to kind of lose significance. So they created this College Hill corridor, which was a corridor designed to connect Mercer to downtown Macon. And so like the painted bears, much like the University of Georgia painted bulldogs, we have a free concert in Macon every second Sunday of the year called Second Sunday Concert Series. The Soapbox Derby, which has now grown to be huge. All these really wonderful events and the bike lanes. There was a lot of infrastructure put in. It was a public-private partnership between Mercer and the James L. Knight Foundation. And my wife was actually hired to handle communications for this. So we started the tour company. We started doing the tour company initially for this sort of effort to connect Mercer to downtown Macon, and then began to really kind of go professional with it. And we owned and operated it for 10 years. We had, people from all over the world came to take tours with us. I don't know exactly how many people, but I don't know, 8,000 plus people over 10 years showing off the sights of Macon. And there were some really great things that came out of it. A lot of times I didn't have much to do with it, except like I was with this young man, Stephen Fulbright, who worked with Visit Macon, and they asked me to come speak at a historic Macon Foundation event about our ghost tours, which we had recently launched. And I was having a glass of wine with Stephen, and I said, hey, I was in Rose Hill the other day, and I noticed a grave got hit, and it looked like very clearly to me that somebody had driven a car in Rose Hill, were probably looking for the graves of the Allman Brothers, but there was no signs to tell people where to go. So they're driving these huge, cars now in a cemetery that was not designed for that kind of stuff. And I said, wouldn't it be great to get some signs in there? And Stephen, to his credit, he took that idea and he ran. And there's now beautiful signage up in Rose Hill Cemetery. There's a QR code map that you can go. I mean, it's just, exploded in tourism. It's remarkable. And again, I didn't have anything to do with that except just a simple comment over wine, right? But they took it and they ran with it. And then one of the things that we really enjoyed, it got killed by COVID, but we started a plaque program in Macon. In fact, that was kind of interesting. I noticed some organization in San Francisco put up a plaque for Jerry Garcia, and I put on Facebook, shared it, and I said, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And some lady replied, let's do it. And of course, this is Facebook, is social media. So, okay, well, why don't we meet and talk about it? And the lady and her husband met. They were wonderful. And they said, we're willing to put in this amount of money to this plaque program. And it was a significant amount of money. So then I was like, well, that's too much money for me to handle. Let me reach out to the Historic Macon Foundation. And Historic Macon Foundation said yes. And so it became, you donated money to the Historic Foundation. They handled the plaque and the installation of the plaque. And we have, I think, 42 of those up throughout the city right now, honoring
Nice.
not just the Allman Brothers, but of course, Otis Redding, Little Richard, Emmett Miller. I mean, it's a pretty, the Alan Walden, Phil Walden. It's a pretty significant little plaque program. And that can be found by searching through the Visit Macon website as well. So, those kinds of things came together in part through my advocacy, but in most part due to the hard work of others. Regarding the tour company, one of the things that was always important to me was just to let people know that the history of Macon is incredibly rich, but we still have a lot of great acts that are out there doing great things. One of my favorite right now is a young lady named Torres, who has a new album coming out with Julian Baker that I think is going to be really successful for her. Of course, Jason Aldean's the big name out of Macon right now. And he's a little bit politically polarizing right now, but to Jason's credit, he has raised a lot of money for our children's hospital in the city of Macon, and he deserves to be acknowledged and credited with that. The drummer for the band The Wild Feathers is out of Macon, but we have other great bands from this region too, called like Tier Blue, Sean Solo, acts that are doing really well. The music industry is so different now. These guys are doing well through like streaming services, and their music's being used in like plays and weddings and stuff. So it's just so drastically different now.
I really appreciate you, man. Really appreciate you coming onto the show and sharing all this knowledge about Macon and all the work that you and Jessica and Visit Macon are doing. If anybody is in town in Macon for the tribute show, make sure you check out Rock Candy Tours at Visit Macon and take that opportunity to learn a little bit about Macon if you don't. And please go see some of the shows. I think Kirk West has a fantastic photo gallery West, and I think they're having music there. Possibly, at least go see those. His collection of photographs are unparalleled in the South.
So Gallery West on 3rd Street, Capricorn Studios on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, H&H Soul Food on Forsyth Street, which fed the Allman Brothers for free. Rock Candy Tours at Visit Macon, which is also on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Rose Hill Cemetery, which is just right off of Riverside Drive. And of course, the Big House Museum at 2321 Vineville Avenue. There's so much to see, but if you can go see that, and make sure you see Capricorn because it's incredible. If you can go see these locations, you'll be a happy person. And I just want to thank everybody for coming to Macon and supporting everything that's going on here. It's an incredible city, and we're just so grateful for everything that everybody's doing to maintain it.
Thanks, Jamie.
All right, buddy.
We'll talk again soon. Big thanks to Jamie Weatherford for the interview, the knowledge, and the willingness to share. His contribution to Macon music has been outstanding over the last 20 years. So we thank him for that. We'll be posting the second half of this interview with Jamie that focused on the Walden brothers, Phil Walden and Alan Walden, and their path to the Capricorn label and its history. Stay tuned for that.